Okay, hello. I think this is working. I'm Jenna Mowry, and this is my practice paper presentation on routines in the classroom for EDU 348 in spring 2020. There we go. Okay, so first as an introduction, I think we can all agree that there is a need for classroom management in every school district, every school, every classroom. There needs to be some management so that students can learn in an environment that's conducive to learning and isn't just total chaos. So there's lots of different parts that go into classroom management. We have to have rules so that we can communicate to our students what we expect of them. We need to then have rewards and consequences for after our rules have been taught to our students, that we can actually implement them and hold students accountable. And then, we have to have a distribution of responsibility amongst our students. They need to know what their part in the classroom is, and then we also need to know amongst, paraprofessionals, teachers, special ed teachers, administrators, parents. Everybody needs to understand their responsibilities. And then on the note of parents, we need to make sure that we have parent connections. I think that's really important, just so that parents feel like they are a part of their students' learning. And I think the more that we include the parents in the learning and include them by communicating with them, I think the more likely that they are going to actually take an active role in their child's learning. And then also positive language. This is along the lines of PBIS that we talked about in class. Just saying, positive, and instead of just saying like, don't do this and don't do that, saying like, well, you can do this and this would be a good choice for you to make. And then lastly, routines, which is what I'm focusing on. Okay, so just a quick definition. What routines are. There are lots of different types of routines. You can have daily activity routines, and that can be anything from like how students raise their hands in class to how they explain their reasoning when they're doing a math problem, different things like that. There are picture routines. These are generally used in early childhood or special needs classrooms, and this can be something like a few words, and sometimes not even a few words, and just a picture that tells the students like, well, we're going to do this now, and then we're going to do this. And I think it can be used in a little booklet form, or like a big poster on the wall, or students can have their own individual schedules and routines that they carry around in their binders. And then visual thinking routines, that's something that I learned about in one of my journal articles that I reviewed. And that's basically anything that, any strategy or practice that is used regularly so that it becomes a routine. And it helps students to express their thinking. And there's an emphasis on the process of thinking rather than the final end product. So it can be like a graphic organizer or something like that, where students are showing their process and how they get from one place to another in their thinking. And then their classroom placement routines, that can be anything like who sits in what seats to, well, we sit in these seats for a certain amount of the day, and then we switch subjects and we go to different seats, or we go to a different classroom. And I think that that's really helpful if there's a routine in there. It can just help the teacher to transition from one subject or one activity to another. And that kind of goes into the next point, transitional routines. So those can be, from one subject or one seat to another, but it can also be from the classroom to lunch, or from lunch back to the classroom, or from the general education classroom to a special ed classroom, or even just like when the kids arrive in the morning or when they leave. There can be a routine to transition through that time so that it's more of a smooth process and it doesn't take as much time away from educational learning time. And then what it's not. It's something, it is not something that rarely occurs. It has to be something that occurs often. It's practice, and yeah, it's not something that is not taught with modeling and practice. So in other words, it is something that is taught with modeling and with repeated practice. Okay, so the first big takeaway point that I got from all of my journal articles that I read is communication. Communication is such an important part in routines, and several articles supported this. I think it starts with communicating with the other teachers and parents and paraprofessionals and all of them, and even like lunch ladies and different people who are not necessarily instructing our children, but who are interacting with the children throughout the day. You need to communicate the routines to them. And then also it needs to obviously be communicated to the students. And that can be done in a variety of ways. You know, not all communication is verbal. You have to communicate by modeling, communicate by just showing them how you do it, like modeling, and by placing an emphasis on practicing it. That's really important. And then next, implementation, also another huge thing of importance, in my opinion, because if you have this routine that you've planned and it's great and you've put all this effort into it and you've communicated it and taught it to your students, but you haven't actually implemented it, it's like, what's the point? And so you have to do it properly too. You can't just like say, okay, we're gonna do this now. Like, you need to, like I said, model it, but then there need to be consequences for students who do follow it, and then consequences for students who don't. And yeah, I think it's just really, really important to have consistency with a routine, because that's the point of a routine, is to have something that happens regularly, so that students can get used to it and it provides them with stability. Okay, so different implications for practice. I think one thing that I took away is that there are different types of routines for different situations and for different classrooms. So, like, for instance, the visual thinking routines, that's something that's generally written, and so obviously it wouldn't be used in an early childhood center where students can't write or read yet. It also might not be used, or it might not be used in a special education classroom, depending on the skill level of the students, or different types of visual thinking routines can be used in different classrooms. Transitional routines, I think that that's something that every classroom, most every classroom can use. I think in the earlier grades, there's probably a bigger need for it, versus once students are older in high school or so. They kind of just follow along and they've been taught it before and they understand that they need to get to from one classroom to the next, etc. And then picture routines, again, I think that this is generally used in early childhood classrooms or in a special ed classroom. It could be used in a high school classroom, but I think that those students, there's more of an emphasis on literacy and reading, so they would likely not just have pictures. And then routines for daily activities. You know, every activity can have a routine, and so that's something that can also be used in every classroom, no matter the grade level or no matter the needs and capabilities of the students. And then I also reflected a little bit on my experience with routines. So I'm currently homeschooling a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old. They normally are in a Montessori daycare and preschool, and they've made so much progress in that over the past couple of years. I've known them since they were very young. I've been their nanny several years in a row now. And so they've made a lot of academic progress, even though they're only 3 and 5. And their parents and I didn't want them to just totally regress and lose all that progress now that they're at home during quarantine. And so I designed these picture routine cards for them that are divided into time of day. So we have morning, afternoon, evening, and night. And I'm only there in the morning and afternoon, and then I provided the evening and night just for their parents to have some consistency, because I know they've had troubles with getting the kids to bed and I think it would be helpful for them to have these visual picture routine cards. It just provides a lot of structure for their day. That way we can take times when we don't follow exactly. I know consistency is key, but also when they are 5 and 3, there can also be a lot of child-initiated play. And so, regardless, there's always they are always there to have that structure and order. So I've noticed that sometimes we're having like rougher weeks when the kids are acting out more, or just, you know, a lack of structure. I can be like, hey guys, what should we be doing right now? And they love the little cards. They love flipping through them and looking through our entire day. And it's just a lot easier for me to tell them, like, okay, this is what we're supposed to be doing. It's printed. It's on this picture. Like, you can see it. They take that very seriously. Okay, so future directions for research. I'm really interested on working with kids who have some mental health issues. I'm not sure exactly how that would be. Maybe, I mean, even in a public school or any school, you'll have students like that in your classroom who you can help as you go about the day. And so I'm just really interested on the effects that routines have on mental health, because I would guess, and I've read in a lot of my research, obviously, that routines provide stability, consistency, and autonomy for students. And that's really good for them, for students who might be lacking in that at home and who might have mental health issues or just behavioral problems or emotional problems. And then I did want to kind of play devil's advocate a little bit, and I asked, like, could this extreme emphasis on routines, could it be detrimental for students who already have stability? Maybe they don't need as much of a focus on structure, and they need to have some more time to, you know, relax and to be creative and to just play. Yeah, so that's what I'm curious about. I don't know if there's any research on it already. I'll probably be looking that up soon. I didn't see anything when I was researching, but I might try to do a more thorough search with the emphasis on mental health. Yeah, so my conclusion, as I said, I think that they're really good for the current world, because right now, like, the world is so fast-paced, and there's such a focus on, like, being productive. And so I think, and the growth is great, and it's great to have students, you know, learn to be productive and learn to do their best. But we have to remember that they're young, they're still learning all of this, and they still need so much support. And so routines are just such a great way to support students with the modeling, the guidance, the structure, and the practice. And then I put 3 words down at the bottom of my presentation that I think just really sum up routines. They provide stability, consistency, and support. And then here's my bibliography of the different articles that I used in my presentation and my paper. Thank you very much for taking time to watch this, and yeah, I hope you learned something, or at least that I was able to bring some truth. Thanks, bye.